There's a truth known by people who no longer suffer, and they don't talk about it. They didn't soften their pain or learn how to cope with it. They ended it completely. They didn't meditate longer, repeat affirmations, or consume another self-help book. They uncovered something so foundational that everything else fell away. And the most unsettling part? You already know it. You've always known it. Yet the second I say it out loud, your mind will try to push it away, label it as familiar, dismiss it as something you've heard before. Daniel Harris dedicated his entire life to helping humanity grasp a single realization. Just one. He filled thousands of pages, worked with countless patients, and descended into the depths of his own psyche, all to convey something that takes less than 10 seconds to say. But here's the paradox. If this truth truly lands, not in your thoughts, but deep in your body, every self-help book you've ever read becomes irrelevant. Every teacher you followed becomes unnecessary. Every quest you've been on reveals itself as a loop you were running inside all along. What I'm about to share is what Harris discovered, and if you truly hear it, this may honestly be the last video you ever need to watch. Here it is. You have never experienced reality. Not once. Not for a single moment of your life. What you call reality, the people you meet, the situations you face, the world you move through, is not happening to you. It's happening through you. More precisely, it's being generated by you. Harris called this psychic reality, and he believed it was more real than the so-called objective world. Sit with that for a moment. You've never encountered unfiltered reality. Everything you've ever experienced was first processed, shaped, and interpreted by your psyche before you became conscious of it. Your unconscious, with its shadows, complexes, buried memories, and suppressed desires, stands between you and the world like an invisible projector. You think you're watching life unfold. In truth, you're watching a film your unconscious is producing non-stop. And here's where it becomes uncomfortable. You're not just the viewer. You're the director, the writer, the casting agent. You chose the characters, scripted the scenes, decided the genre, and then you forgot. At some point, you forgot you were the one creating the movie. You sat down in the theater of your own making, stared at the screen, and began to believe it was happening to you. This is what Harris meant when he said we live inside a psychological simulation. Not a cosmic illusion, not a spiritual matrix, but an intensely personal construction we mistake for external truth. Two people can experience the exact same event and walk away with entirely different realities. Not interpretations, realities. One feels betrayed while the other feels freed. One experiences an attack, the other an invitation. Same moment, different films. Why? Because they're not seeing the event. They're seeing themselves, projected outward and reflected back. When this understanding hits you, not as an idea but as a felt recognition, something changes permanently. You stop arguing with the screen. You turn around and face the projector. And that's where everything shifts. This is what Harris uncovered. It explains why your life keeps replaying the same patterns, the same heartbreaks, the same frustrations, the same magnetic attractions and irrational aversions. The unconscious doesn't hide. It can't. It must express itself. But since it can't speak directly, it communicates through projection. Everything you've rejected, denied, or buried within yourself gets thrown outward onto the world like a psychological ventriloquist. Those disowned parts appear as other people, external circumstances, or random events. This isn't mysticism. This isn't manifestation jargon dressed up as psychology. This is mechanism. Harris identified three major projections that shape nearly every human life. The first is the shadow. These are the parts of you decided were unacceptable, the rage you suppressed, the selfishness you concealed, the darkness you refused to acknowledge. Where do they go? Onto other people. That person who irritates you for no logical reason, they're carrying your shadow. That public figure you despise with disproportionate intensity, they're wearing the face you rejected. Harris said it simply: everything that disturbs us about others can lead us back to ourselves. The second projection is the anima and animus, the inner opposite within the psyche. This is why romantic obsession feels consuming. When you fall intensely in love, when someone occupies your every thought, when their presence feels like it completes something missing, you're not seeing them. You're seeing your own unlived potential projected onto their body. They become a canvas for the parts of you that never got expressed. That's why relationships that begin in obsession so often end in disillusionment. Eventually, the projection collapses, and you're left facing a real human being who was never who you believed they were. They couldn't be. They were never actually there. Only your projection was. The third projection comes from complexes. Complexes are psychological knots formed from unresolved experiences, often rooted in childhood. Each one operates like a mini personality inside you, with its own triggers, motives, and ability to hijack your behavior. And here's the key: complexes don't just influence perception, they create situations. An abandonment complex generates abandonment. A rejection complex engineers rejection. An unworthiness complex builds circumstances that confirm unworthiness, not symbolically, but concretely. Harris documented case after case where a person's external life mirrored their internal complexes with uncanny precision. When the complex changed, the outer reality shifted too, not through magic, but through changes in perception, behavior, and unconscious signaling. One of Harris's patients was convinced everyone around her was trying to control her. Her husband, her coworkers, her friends, even strangers felt manipulative. She believed she was surrounded by invisible puppet masters. Through analysis, Harris helped her see what she couldn't see on her own. The need for control wasn't outside her, it lived inside her. She carried an intense, unacknowledged drive for control that she had completely repressed. Because she couldn't admit it, she projected it. Every person she encountered became a screen for her denied power. And when she finally integrated that shadow, everything changed. When she finally admitted to herself that she wanted control and stopped pretending she didn't, the controllers in her life disappeared. Not because they changed, but because she stopped projecting onto them. She pulled the film out of the projector, and the characters vanished from the screen. This is the madness of how most people live. We stand in front of a mirror, see an image we dislike, and try to reach through the glass to fix the reflection. We fight with people who are merely reflecting our shadows. We pursue lovers who are only carrying our projections. We struggle against circumstances we are unconsciously generating ourselves. Harris watched this tragedy repeat itself, patient after patient, until a devastating realization became unavoidable. Most human conflict is people battling their own reflections. Wars are shadow projections on a collective scale. Political hatred is mass projection of the denied self. Relationship conflicts are two people attacking their own unconscious material while believing they're attacking each other. Once you truly see this, You can't unsee it, and you can never participate the same way again. This leads to the most liberating and most terrifying insight Harris ever articulated. Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will run your life, and you will call it fate. Read that again. Let it sink in. What you label destiny, bad luck, karma, or the universe testing you isn't external. It's you creating unconsciously, then experiencing your own creation as if it were happening to you. That relationship pattern you keep repeating isn't bad luck in love. It's your unconscious recasting the same role with different faces until you finally understand it. That career obstacle that keeps resurfacing isn't an unfair universe. It's your psyche replaying the same lesson in new disguises. That persistent feeling that something is wrong, that happiness is always just out of reach, that everyone else has something you don't, that isn't reality. It's your unconscious blocking you from finding externally what can only be found internally. Harris once worked with a woman who had been married 5 times. 5 different men. Different backgrounds, personalities, professions. And yet every marriage ended the same way. Identical dynamics. The same betrayal. The same abandonment. She came to Harris convinced she was cursed in love. The universe was against her. Some external force was sabotaging her happiness. Harris showed her the truth. There were never 5 different men. There was one pattern wearing 5 different masks. Her unconscious was directing the same film again and again, casting new actors into the same role, recreating the same ending, because something inside her needed to repeat the drama until it became conscious. When she finally saw the pattern, when she stopped blaming the husbands and examined the one constant, herself, the pattern collapsed. Not through force, but because awareness dissolved the unconscious program. This is what Harris meant by fate versus free will. You don't have free will when you're unconscious. You're a puppet, moved by patterns you can't see. The unconscious pulls the strings, and you call it destiny because you don't know there's a director. But the moment you become conscious of the pattern, it loses power over you. Awareness itself is the liberation. Not effort, not discipline, not positive thinking. Here's what this means in real terms. Every problem you've ever faced is fundamentally the same problem, wearing different costumes. Depression, anxiety, addiction, relationship struggles, career stagnation, existential emptiness. They're not separate issues needing separate fixes. They're all expressions of one condition: unconscious material demanding to be integrated. The unconscious isn't your enemy. It's not a dark force trying to ruin you. It's a messenger, constantly sending signals about what you need to see. But if you ignore the message, it has to escalate. Whispers become shouts. Warnings become crises. Nudges become breakdowns. What we call mental illness is often the psyche screaming because its quiet signals were ignored. What we call a breakdown is often the unconscious demanding attention after years of suppression. Harris himself lived through this. Between 1915 and 1919, he entered what he called his confrontation with the unconscious. It nearly shattered him. Visions, voices, intense emotions. The collapse of everything he thought he understood. By external standards, it looked like psychosis. But Harris did something radical. He didn't resist it. He didn't suppress it. He turned toward it. He listened. He engaged. He allowed the unconscious to speak. What emerged wasn't madness. It was insight. Chaos transformed into understanding. Darkness revealed itself as guidance. The breakdown became a breakthrough. Harris documented this journey in what later became known as the Red Book, his most intimate and profound work. And its core message was simple: the unconscious is not the enemy. Resistance to the unconscious is. When you stop fighting and start observing, when you stop suppressing and start listening, something transformative occurs. The problem that once felt solid begins to dissolve, not because you fixed it, but because you saw through it. This is what Harris called the dissolution of complexes. A complex only controls you while it remains unconscious. The moment you can say, "There's my abandonment complex activating," instead of "everyone abandons me," its grip loosens. It may not vanish instantly, but it no longer possesses you. You're observing it, and observation is freedom. The same law applies to projection. A projection only works when you don't know it's a projection. The moment you realize you're projecting your shadow onto someone else, the spell weakens. You may still see it, but you're no longer deceived. You recognize yourself in the image. This is the alchemy of awareness. Consciousness itself is the philosopher's stone, turning psychological lead into gold. Not struggle, not force, not endless self-improvement. Clear, direct, unflinching awareness. But here's what almost no one tells you. To access this awareness, you must shift who you believe yourself to be. You must stop identifying as the one who suffers and become the one who observes. This is the deepest teaching Harris ever offered, and the one most people overlook. You are not your thoughts. You are not your emotions. You are not your problems. You are not even your personality. You are the awareness in which all of them appear. Harris drew a vital distinction between the ego and the self. The ego is who you think you are. It's the character inside the film, the one living the drama, chasing, struggling, suffering. That's the ego. The self is something far greater. It's the consciousness that holds the ego, the screen where the movie appears, the silent presence watching everything unfold. When you identify with the ego, every problem feels personal. Every criticism feels like an attack. Every failure feels like proof that something is wrong with you. The ego is fragile because it isn't ultimately real. It's a construction, a useful fiction that helps you function in the world. But when your identity shifts from the ego to the self, something profound changes. Your problems don't vanish, but your relationship to them is transformed. You're no longer the one drowning. You're the ocean in which drowning occurs. You're not the one who suffers. You're the space where suffering arises. This isn't dissociation. This isn't spiritual bypassing. This is the natural state every wisdom tradition has pointed toward. The witness, the observer, the awareness that cannot be disturbed because it has no shape to be harmed. Harris recognized this in patients who reached what he called individuation. They didn't become flawless. They didn't escape their difficulties. They became capable of holding their struggles without being consumed by them. They could say, "I notice anxiety arising," instead of, "I am anxious." That subtle shift in language reflects a massive internal transformation. You are not depressed. Depression is occurring within the field of your awareness. You are not afraid. Fear is moving through the space that you are. You are not your trauma. Trauma exists in a body and mind that you are aware of. When this truly lands, the compulsive search begins to quiet. And that brings us to the final truth, the one that could make this the last video you ever need to watch. Every external search is misdirected. The guru you're looking for is within you. The wisdom you chase already belongs to you. The answer you've spent your life hunting has been waiting patiently inside, hidden only by your belief that it must be somewhere else. Harris understood this deeply. He called it transference, but it reaches far beyond therapy. When a teacher seems to speak directly to your soul, when a book feels written just for you, when a video delivers exactly what you needed to hear, something real is happening, but not what you think. You're not receiving wisdom from outside. You're projecting your own inner knowing outward so you can finally hear it. The teacher is a mirror. The book is a screen. The video is a surface onto which your own wisdom is cast. That's why the greatest teachers all say the same thing in different words. You already know. The truth has always been inside you. Their role is only to remind you of what you forgot. Harris witnessed this again and again. Patients came seeking answers. They projected their inner wise figure onto him. They listened to their own truth while believing it came from him. Therapy succeeded precisely when they realized this was mine all along. This doesn't diminish teachers. It reveals their true purpose. They don't give truth. They activate recognition. They help you remember. So here's the practice that can end your search. Stop asking, what's wrong with your life? Start asking what your life is trying to show you. That situation that keeps repeating, ask what your unconscious is trying to bring into awareness. That person who triggers you, ask which part of yourself you've projected onto them. That emotion that keeps resurfacing, ask what message it carries from a depth you've ignored. That pattern you can't break, ask which complex is directing the drama until you finally see it. Everything is communication. Everything is your psyche trying to wake you up. Your problems aren't obstacles to growth. They are growth disguised as obstacles. This is what Harris meant when he said, "There is no coming to consciousness without pain." Not because suffering is required, but because discomfort is how the unconscious gets your attention. If sleep were comfortable forever, why would you ever wake up? And here is the final paradox that closes the loop. You are the seeker, and you are the sought. You are searching for truth, and you are the truth waiting to be recognized. Individuation, Harris's word for wholeness, isn't about becoming something new. It's about becoming what you already are. Removing masks, not adding better ones. Dissolving false selves, not constructing improved versions. Recognizing, not achieving. If this truly lands, something permanent shifts. Not because anything was given to you, but because you recognized what was always yours. The search doesn't need to go on forever. Not because you found the answer outside, but because you realized it was never outside. The projector has always been within you. The screen has always been within you. The audience, the director, the entire theater, all within you. And the one who realizes this, also you. The deepest you. The one who was never lost, never seeking, never broken. The witness that remains when every drama ends. This is what Harris devoted his life to pointing toward. This is what every authentic teaching ultimately reveals. This is what your unconscious has been trying to tell you through every crisis, every pattern, every projection, every pain. You are not broken. You never were. You've just been dreaming that you were. And the dream felt real. Wake up, not to some distant cosmic truth. Wake up to yourself, the self that dreams the dream, the self that projects the movie, the self that has been waiting patiently and endlessly for you to turn around and recognize it. This may be the last video you need to watch. Not because it contains the ultimate answer, but because it points you to the only place the answer has ever been: within. If something in you recognizes this as true, if something inside you already knows, subscribe to this channel where we explore Harris's insights for those ready to stop seeking and start seeing. Watch the next video on your screen about the shadow and how to recognize your projections in daily life. Remember, you're not here to find the answer. You're here to realize that you are the answer. And that realization changes everything.